The transport ship moved slowly toward the massive space station. Inside, Lieutenant Park pressed his face against the small window and watched the station grow larger and larger. It was the biggest thing he had ever seen. The Galactic Council station stretched across space like a small moon, covered with lights and docking ports and antenna arrays that reached out in every direction. Was 32 years old. He had served in Earth Space Defense Force for 10 years. He had trained for this mission for 2 more years after that, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. He was about to become the first human military officer to set foot on the Council station. The transport docked with a gentle bump, picked up his single bag and walked toward the airlock. His uniform was pressed perfectly. His boots were polished until they shone. He wanted to make a good impression. The airlock opened and stepped into a new world. The corridor was filled with aliens. He had seen pictures and videos during his training, but seeing them in person was completely different. A group of tall, thin beings with blue skin walked past him without even looking his way. Behind them came a creature that looked like a giant insect, its many legs clicking against the metal floor. In the distance, he could see something that seemed to be made entirely of floating rocks held together by some invisible force. Nobody stopped to greet him. Nobody seemed to care that a human was standing there for the first time in history. A voice spoke from somewhere to his left. "You are the human observer." Turned and saw another insect-like creature approaching. This one was smaller than the others, with a dark green shell and large, compound eyes that reflected the corridor lights. "Yes," said, "I am Lieutenant Park from Earth." "I am Coordinator," the creature said. Its mandibles clicked together as it spoke, but somehow the translation device in its ear turned those clicks into words. "I have been assigned to be your liaison during your stay. Follow me." Turned and began walking without waiting for a response, hurried to keep up. The coordinator's many legs moved fast. "The Council has accepted humanity into the galactic community," said as they walked. "This is a great honor. Your species achieved space travel only recently. Most species wait much longer before receiving such recognition." "We are grateful for the opportunity," said carefully. "You should be." His voice carried no emotion but sensed something in those words, something like dismissal. "Your assignment here is simple. You will observe the war games. You will watch and learn. You will report your observations to your government. You will not participate. You will not interfere. Is this understood?" "Understood," said. They passed through several more corridors. Each one was filled with different species going about their business. Some of them glanced at with curiosity. Most ignored him completely. He was, after all, just a human, a newcomer, a primitive from a young world. Led him to a small room with a window overlooking a massive arena. The arena was empty now, but could see thousands of seats arranged in circles around a central platform. Holographic projectors hung from the ceiling. "This is your observation booth," said. "From here, you will watch the war games. The games begin in 3 days. 12 species will compete. Each species will command a fleet in a fully immersive simulation. The battles will be projected in the arena for all to see." Studied the arena. "How long have these games been happening?" "The war games have been held every 10 cycles for the past 4,000 years, said. "They are the most prestigious military exercise in the galaxy. Victory brings great honor to a species. Defeat brings shame." 4,000 years, repeated quietly. Earth had barely discovered fire 4,000 years ago. "The current champions are the," continued. "They have won the games for the past 200 years without losing a single match. Their defensive formations are considered perfect. Many believe they cannot be defeated." Nodded, storing this information in his mind. "And the other species?" Made a sound that might have been a sigh. "They are known for their aggressive tactics, the prefer negotiation and political maneuvering. The hierarchy of has never lost a championship final. Each species has their strengths. Each species has their traditions." Traditions said, so they fight the same way every time. His compound eyes seemed to focus on him more intensely. Tradition is strength. The strategies that have worked for thousands of years continue to work. Why would anyone change what already succeeds? Did not answer, but inside his mind, he was already thinking. He thought about all the military history he had studied back on Earth. He thought about how every great victory in human history had come from someone who refused to fight the expected way. Over the next 3 days, watched the preparations. He studied the other species delegations as they arrived. He listened to their commanders boast about their coming victories. He read everything he could find about past war games in the station's public archives. And he noticed something interesting. Every species fought exactly the way it described. They always formed their famous defensive clusters. They always charged directly at their enemies. They always tried to delay and negotiate. Match after match, year after year, century after century, they did the same things. Nobody adapted. Nobody tried new strategies. Nobody took risks. On the third day, was sitting in his observation booth when alarms began to sound throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Voices spoke urgently in dozens of alien languages. Appeared at his door moments later. The coordinator's mandibles were clicking rapidly, a sign of stress that had learned to recognize. There has been an accident, said. A malfunction in the simulation core. The delegation was connected to the system when it happened. Their entire command structure has been eliminated. They cannot compete. Stood up, are they injured? Their physical bodies are unharmed, said, but their neural connections to the simulation have been severed. They cannot re-enter the games. They are out. What does this mean for the tournament? His legs shifted nervously. The games require 12 participants. The bracket cannot function with only 11, but no species will give up their position, and we cannot ask another species to provide a second team. It would cause political problems that could take decades to resolve. Felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it as excitement. You need a 12th team, he said slowly. His eyes fixed on him. Yes. And there is only one species available that is not already competing. The coordinator was silent for a long moment. When finally spoke, the words seemed to cause physical pain. The council is meeting now to discuss the possibility. I wanted to warn you before they make their decision. If humanity is asked to participate, you must understand something important. What is that? Moved closer, lowering its voice. You will lose. You will lose badly. The other species will destroy you in the first round. This will not bring honor to humanity. It will bring embarrassment. Some on the council believe this is exactly what your species deserves for rising so quickly. They want to see you humiliated. Looked out the window at the empty arena. In 3 days, it would be filled with spectators from across the galaxy. They would all be watching. They would all be watching humanity. He turned back to and smiled. Let them watch. The council chamber was a massive circular room. Representatives from over 100 species sat in rising rows that curved around a central speaking platform. Had never seen so many different kinds of life gathered in one place. There were beings of every shape, size, and color. Some breathed different atmospheres and sat inside sealed bubbles. Others floated in tanks of water or other liquids. A few seemed to exist as nothing more than patterns of light. Stood alone on the central platform, he felt very small. The council speaker was a being called Ambassador, belonged to a species that looked somewhat like tall, gray-skinned humans, but with 4 arms and no visible mouth. When spoke, the words seemed to come from everywhere at once. The council has considered the situation, announced. The war games cannot proceed with 11 participants. A 12th must be found. After much debate, we have decided to offer humanity the chance to compete. A wave of noise swept through the chamber. Some of it sounded like laughter. Some of it sounded like anger, kept his face calm and waited. Lieutenant Park continued, "You are the only human on this station. If humanity accepts this offer, you will serve as your species' sole commander. You will control your fleet alone, without support staff or advisors. Do you understand the difficulty of this task?" "I understand," said. "Do you also understand that you will face opponents with centuries of experience, commanders who have trained their entire lives for these games?" "I understand." More sounds from the audience, definitely laughter this time. A new voice spoke up. It came from the section, where a group of beings that looked like silver-skinned humanoids with elongated heads sat together. Their ambassador rose to speak. "I find this situation amusing," the ambassador said. "We welcome the human to the games. Perhaps we should offer them a handicap, double their starting resources, give them an extra planet to begin with." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Looked directly at the ambassador. "No handicap is necessary." The laughter stopped. The ambassador's silver face showed surprise. "You refuse assistance." "I refuse nothing that is offered in good faith," said. "But a handicap suggests we need special help to compete. We do not. Humanity will participate on equal terms with every other species, or we will not participate at all." The chamber fell silent. Ambassador's forearms moved in a gesture that seemed to indicate approval. "Very well, the human has spoken. Humanity will compete in the war games on equal terms. Lieutenant Park, you may return to your quarters to prepare. The games begin tomorrow." Bowed respectfully and left the chamber. As soon as the doors closed behind him, he allowed himself to take a deep breath. His hands were shaking slightly. He had just committed his entire species to a competition they had never trained for, against opponents who had been doing this for thousands of years. He needed to contact Earth. The communication room was small and private, sat before the quantum transmitter and waited for the connection to establish. The delay was minimal thanks to the advanced technology, but it still felt like an eternity. Finally, the screen flickered to life. Admiral appeared. She was an older woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen many battles. She was also one of the most respected military minds on Earth. "Lieutenant Park," she said, "I received your preliminary report. You have accepted the Council's offer." "Yes, Admiral. I felt there was no other choice. Refusing would have made humanity look weak." "Agreed." The Admiral leaned forward. "The High Command has discussed the situation. We are authorizing your full participation. Whatever resources you need from Earth, we will provide." Shook his head. "The simulation provides all resources, Admiral. All participants start with the same fleet and the same materials. What I need is something else." "Name it." "I need access to our military history archives. Everything. Every war, every battle, every strategy that humans have ever used against each other. I need it sent to my personal within the hour." Admiral was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. It was a small smile, but it was genuine. "You plan to use our own history against them." "The aliens have been fighting wars for thousands of years," said, "but they always fight the same way. Their strategies never change. We have been fighting wars for thousands of years too, but we fight differently every time. We adapt. We improvise. We surprise our enemies with tactics they have never seen before." "Because our enemies were always other humans," the Admiral said, understanding immediately. "And humans always find ways to counter whatever worked before." "Exactly. Every strategy the aliens use, we have already invented, tested, defeated, and moved past. They have experience, but we have variety. That is our advantage." The Admiral nodded slowly. "The archives will be sent immediately. Is there anything else?" Hesitated. "Yes, one more thing." "What is it?" "Tell Earth to watch. Everyone should watch. Whatever happens in these games, win or lose, our people should see it." "Why?" thought about the laughter in the council chamber. He thought about how every alien species had dismissed humanity without a second thought. He thought about all the times in human history when the underdog had risen up and surprised the world. Because tomorrow, we will show the galaxy what humans can do, and they should not have to hear about it secondhand. The Admiral's smile widened. I will make sure every screen on Earth is tuned to the broadcast. Good luck, Lieutenant, make us proud. The connection ended, sat alone in the quiet room for a long moment. Then he picked up his and began to read. He read about the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 warriors held off an army of thousands through clever use of terrain. He read about Hannibal crossing the Alps with elephants, attacking Rome from a direction no one expected. He read about the Mongol horse archers who defeated larger armies by refusing to stand and fight directly. He read about guerrilla warfare and ambush tactics. He read about feints and deceptions. He read about the importance of supply lines and the devastating effects of cutting them. He read about morale and psychology, how fear and confusion could defeat an enemy faster than any weapon. As the hours passed, began to see patterns. Every great victory in human history shared certain elements: surprise, adaptation, the willingness to break rules that the enemy expected you to follow. The aliens had rules. They had traditions. They had strategies that had worked for thousands of years and saw no reason to change. Would give them reasons. When the morning came, he walked to the simulation center with his in hand. Other commanders were already gathering outside, surrounded by their support teams and advisors. The delegation traveled in a group of 20. They had brought an entire strategic planning department. Even the smallest delegations had at least 5 members. Stood alone. Coordinator appeared beside him. The liaison looked at the human with what might have been concern. Are you prepared? Asked. Yes. You have no support staff, no advisors, no backup commanders. You will be managing an entire fleet by yourself. I know. Clicked its mandibles nervously. The first round pairings have been announced. You will face the... Felt his stomach tighten. Though the reigning champions, the species that had not lost a single match in 200 years. Thank you for telling me, he said calmly. You do not seem concerned. Looked at should I be? Everyone else would be. They are the best. Their defensive formations are perfect. No one has ever broken through them. Smiled. No one has ever tried the way I am going to try. Before could respond, the doors to the simulation center opened. A voice announced that all commanders should proceed to their pods. The war games were about to begin. Took a deep breath and walked forward. Behind him, he could hear the other commanders whispering. He caught words in various alien languages, words that his translator rendered as human, foolish, and entertainment. Let them talk, he thought, let them laugh. He climbed into his simulation pod and felt the neural connections activate. The world around him dissolved into light and color. When it reformed, he was standing on the bridge of a starship. His starship, his fleet. 40 warships, 3 colony vessels, limited resources. It was not much, but it was enough. On the main, he could see the fleet assembling in the distance. Their ships moved with perfect precision, sliding into the famous defensive formation that had never been broken. Studied the formation carefully. Then he began giving orders to his fleet. The battle was about to begin. The formation was beautiful in its perfection. 30 silver warships arranged in overlapping layers, each one protecting the others, their shields creating a wall of energy that seemed impossible to penetrate. At the center sat their command vessel, safe behind the protective barrier of its fleet. In the arena, thousands of spectators watched the holographic display. They could see both fleets clearly, the formation on one side and the scattered human ships on the other. The commentators, experts from various species, were already predicting the outcome. The human fleet appears disorganized, one commentator said. They have no formation at all. This will be over quickly. Inside his simulation pod smiled. He wanted them to think he was disorganized. He wanted them to believe he had no plan. All ships, he commanded, begin Phase 1. 10 of his smallest, fastest ships broke away from the main group. They did not head toward the formation. Instead, they scattered in different directions, moving erratically, broadcasting signals on multiple frequencies. On the command ship, Commander watched the strange behavior with confusion. His silver face showed no expression, but his officers exchanged uncertain glances. "What are they doing?" one officer asked. "Unknown," another replied. "The small ships are broadcasting. Noise, random signals. They appear to be malfunctioning." Commander studied the display. It could be a distraction. Maintain formation. Let them waste their energy on meaningless movements. The fleet held its position. This was their greatest strength, patience. They never broke formation. They never chased enemies. They waited for their opponents to come to them, and then they crushed them against their shields. Hours passed. The human ships continued their strange dance around the edges of the battlefield. They came close to the formation, then retreated. They circled around behind, then moved away. They never attacked. They never committed. In the arena, the spectators grew restless. "The human is afraid," one commentator said. "He refuses to engage. Perhaps he realizes he cannot win and is simply delaying the inevitable." Heard the commentary through his neural link. He ignored it. Everything was going according to plan. "Phase 2, he ordered, "now." 5 of his ships suddenly accelerated toward the formation. They fired their weapons at full power, their energy beams splashing harmlessly against the overlapping shields. The returned fire, but the human ships were already retreating, drawing the defensive fire away from the main formation. Commander allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. "They are testing our defenses. They will find no weakness." "Commander," an officer reported, "the main human fleet is moving. They are heading away from us, toward the asteroid field in Sector 7. "Let them run," said. "We do not chase, we hold position." But something nagged at him. Why would the human retreat toward the asteroid field? What possible advantage could that location offer? The answer came 2 hours later. "Commander, we have lost contact with our supply convoy." Turned sharply, "What?" "The supply ships that were bringing additional resources from our controlled planets. They were passing through Sector 7. They have gone silent." On the main display, new information appeared. The human fleet had not been running away. They had been positioning themselves to intercept the supply line. While held his perfect formation, waiting for an attack that never came, the humans had simply gone around him and cut off his resources. "This is unprecedented," one officer said quietly. It was. No one attacked supply lines in the war games. It was considered dishonorable, wasteful. The battles were supposed to be fleet against fleet, formation against formation, strength against strength. The human was not fighting with strength. He was fighting with strategy. "All ships," Commander ordered, "break formation. We must recover our supply line." The moment the words left his mouth, he knew he had made a mistake. The formation began to separate, ships moving out of their protective positions to pursue the human fleet. And as soon as they did, alarms began to sound. Multiple contacts, human ships emerging from the asteroid field, had hidden the rest of his fleet among the rocks, powered down and invisible. Now they emerged like wolves from the forest, striking at the separated ships from unexpected angles. The battle lasted 4 more hours, but the outcome was decided in that moment. Without their formation, there were just individual ships fighting individual ships. Their commanders had never trained for this kind of combat. They did not know how to adapt. The human ships did not fight fair. They worked in pairs and groups, targeting damaged vessels, retreating when the odds turned against them, regrouping and attacking again from new directions. It was chaos. It was madness. It was exactly how humans had fought each other for thousands of years. When the last ship surrendered, the arena fell completely silent. The commentators had stopped talking. The spectators sat frozen in their seats. The reigning champions had been defeated by a human in the first round. Inside his pod, allowed himself a moment of relief. His hands were shaking from the concentration required to manage his entire fleet alone, but he had done it. He had won. Coordinator was waiting for him when he emerged from the simulation center. The mandibles were clicking in a way had never seen before. Struggled for words. That was not how wars are fought. That is exactly how wars are fought, replied. On Earth, at least. You attacked their supply line. You hid in asteroids. You refused to face them directly. Yes, it was ineffective. Nodded, it was necessary. The second round came the next day. His opponent was a species of large, powerful beings who believed in direct confrontation above all else. Their ships were heavily armored. Their weapons were devastating. They always charged straight at their enemies and overwhelmed them with raw firepower. Did not give them anything to charge at. He spread his fleet across the battlefield, never gathering in one place. When they charged, they found only empty space. When they turned to pursue, human ships appeared behind them, striking at their engines and retreating before they could respond. The commander, a massive warrior named General, grew increasingly frustrated. His species did not understand retreat. They did not understand hit-and-run tactics. Every time he tried to bring his superior firepower to bear, the humans simply moved away. Used the terrain. He led ships into asteroid fields where their large vessels could not maneuver. He created fake formations using decoy drones, causing them to waste ammunition on targets that did not exist. He attacked their flanks, their rear, their supply ships, anything except their front. By the end, General was screaming in rage at his command console. His fleet was scattered, confused, and running low on resources. When finally allowed his ships to gather for one concentrated attack, they had nothing left to fight with. The second victory was announced to a stunned galaxy. Back on Earth, Admiral watched the broadcast with her command staff. Captain stood beside her, barely able to contain her excitement. He is using everything, said. I recognize tactics from at least 12 different historical battles in that last engagement. He is adapting, Admiral replied. Each opponent is different, so he fights differently each time. The aliens cannot predict him because he never fights the same way twice. Will he win? Asked. The Admiral was quiet for a moment. I do not know, but he has already achieved something incredible. He has shown the galaxy that humanity is not to be dismissed. Whatever happens next, they will never look at us the same way again. On the station, prepared for the third round. Then the fourth. Each battle brought new challenges. Each opponent had different strengths and different traditions. And each time found ways to turn their traditions against them, because that was what humans did. That was what they had always done. The galaxy was beginning to learn. The championship round was announced at midnight. Had barely slept in days. His eyes were red and tired. His body ached from the hours spent in the simulation pod. But when he heard the name of his final opponent, he felt a cold shock run through his entire body. The hierarchy of Supreme Tactician was not just another commander. He was a legend. For 3,000 years, he had led the forces in conflicts both real and simulated. He had never lost a war games final. His strategies were studied in military academies across the galaxy. Some species considered him the greatest military mind to ever exist. And now he was watching previous battles with great interest. In his private chambers aboard the flagship, studied the recordings again and again. He was an ancient being, his body more machine than flesh after thousands of years of life extension. But his mind was sharp. His mind had always been sharp. "Fascinating," he murmured. "The human does not follow any established doctrine. He creates new tactics for each opponent. He exploits weaknesses that no one else would think to exploit." "He is dangerous," his aide said. "He is brilliant," corrected. "I have not faced an opponent like this in 2,000 years, perhaps longer. The other species have become predictable. Their traditions have made them rigid, but this human, he has no traditions. He has only instinct and creativity." "How will you defeat him?" Was silent for a long moment. Then he did something that no one had ever seen him do before. He began deleting his own battle plans from the computer. "We will not use our standard formations," he announced. "We will not use our traditional strategies. If I fight the human the way I have always fought, he will find a way to defeat me. So I must become unpredictable as well." For the first time in centuries, Supreme Tactician began creating something new. The final battle began at dawn. Entered his simulation pod with a knot of fear in his stomach. He had studied history. He had watched recordings of the commander's past victories. He had developed counter-strategies for every traditional tactic. But when the simulation began, everything went wrong. The fleet did not form their usual battle lines. Instead, they spread out across the battlefield in a pattern that did not recognize. When he sent his flanking ships around the edges, they found vessels waiting for them. When he tried to cut their supply lines, he discovered that had hidden backup supplies in unexpected locations. "He is adapting," realized with a shock. "He watched my previous battles, he learned from them." For the first time, faced an opponent who was fighting like a human. The battle was brutal. Within 2 hours had lost half his fleet. His flanking maneuvers were predicted and countered. His decoy ships were identified and destroyed before they could serve their purpose. His ambush positions were avoided. In the arena, the spectators watched in amazement. They had never seen fight like this. The ancient commander was moving his ships with a flexibility that seemed impossible for someone with 3,000 years of established habits. "The human is losing," the commentators said. "Supreme Tactician has proven once again why he is the greatest commander in the galaxy." Back on Earth, Admiral watched the battle with a heavy heart. Captain stood beside her, wanting to say something encouraging but finding no words. "Should we send him a message?" finally asked. "Some encouragement?" Admiral shook her head. "He does not need encouragement. He needs to remember who he is." "What do you mean?" "Is fighting against adaptation. He is trying to out-adapt someone who has had days to prepare counter-strategies. That is not how he wins." "Then how does he win?" The Admiral was quiet for a moment. "By doing something so unexpected that even an opponent who is trying to be unpredictable cannot predict it." In the simulation, stared at his tactical display. He had 20 ships remaining, had 32. The commander had better positioning, more resources, and clearly understood human tactics well enough to counter them. Every logical analysis said he should surrender. Any reasonable calculation showed that continuing would only result in a more devastating defeat. Took a deep breath, then he gave an order that made no sense at all. "All ships scatter. Independent command authority granted to all captains. No central coordination. Fight as individuals." His bridge officers, simulated but realistic, stared at him in confusion. "Sir, that will eliminate any possibility of coordinated attacks. We will be even weaker." "Do it," commanded, "now." The human fleet broke apart. 20 ships flew in 20 different directions, each one making its own decisions, following its own instincts. There was no formation. There was no strategy. There was only chaos. On the flagship, Supreme Tactician watched the display with growing confusion. "What are they doing?" he asked. "Unknown, Supreme Tactician. They appear to have abandoned all coordination. Each ship is acting independently." Tactical algorithms began processing the new situation, but they could not find patterns because there were no patterns. Each human ship was behaving differently. Some attacked, some retreated, some hid, some charged directly at superior enemies for no apparent reason. It was madness, complete and total madness. "Track the command ship," ordered. "If we destroy their leader, the rest will surrender." "We cannot identify which ship contains Lieutenant Park. He could be on any of them." Felt something he had not felt in centuries: uncertainty. "Then chase them all, destroy them one by one." The fleet began to fragment, ships pursuing individual human vessels across the battlefield. The perfect coordination that had given them the advantage began to break down as each captain made their own decisions about which target to chase. And then, from inside a derelict asteroid that no one had thought to scan, 3 human ships emerged. They had been hidden there from the very beginning of the battle, had placed them there before the fighting even started, powered down and completely invisible. While prepared his counter-strategies and adapted to human tactics, 3 ships had been sitting in the darkness, waiting. Now they appeared directly behind's command vessel. The flagship's shields were oriented forward, toward the scattered battle. Its escort ships had been drawn away to chase human targets. It was completely exposed. Was not on any of the scattered ships. He was on the lead vessel emerging from the asteroid. He had gambled everything on this one moment. "Fire everything," he commanded. 3 human ships unleashed their full arsenal at point-blank range. The flagship's shields collapsed in seconds. The engines exploded moments later. Supreme Tactician barely had time to register what was happening before his bridge was consumed by fire. The simulation ended. In the arena, absolute silence. The holographic display showed the burning wreck of the flagship surrounded by scattered ships from both fleets. The human vessels were regrouping. The vessels had stopped moving entirely, their commanders waiting for orders from a flagship that no longer existed. His voice came through the communication system. "Fleet, your command structure has been destroyed. You may surrender or continue fighting. The choice is yours." One by one, the ships powered down their weapons. The war games were over. Humanity had won. In the arena, the silence stretched for several seconds. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single pair of hands began clapping, then another, and another. Within moments, the entire arena was filled with applause. Species that had laughed at humanity days ago were now on their feet, making whatever sounds their biology used to express approval. Inside his pod, allowed himself to collapse against the seat. His hands were trembling. His heart was pounding, but through the exhaustion he felt something else. Pride. The doors opened, and Coordinator was waiting. The compound eyes reflected the lights of the arena. "How?" asked quietly. "How did you hide those ships without anyone knowing?" Smiled weakly. "Was watching for human tactics. He was looking for the things I had done before, flanking, ambushes, supply line attacks. He prepared for all of them." "So you did something you had never done before." "I hid ships before the battle even started, before had a chance to analyze anything. It was a gamble. If he had found them, I would have lost 3 ships for nothing. But humans are good at gambling." Was quiet for a moment. "Has never been defeated in 3,000 years. I know. The galaxy will remember this day for a very long time." Nodded slowly. He hoped they would, not because he wanted glory, but because humanity needed the galaxy to remember. They needed the other species to understand that humans were not primitives to be dismissed. They were survivors, adapters, fighters. And they were just getting started. The council chamber was filled beyond capacity. Representatives from species that normally never attended these sessions had traveled from across the galaxy to be present. The air hummed with hundreds of different translation frequencies as beings of every kind discussed what they had witnessed. Stood on the central platform once again. This time, he was not alone. Admiral had arrived on an emergency transport ship just hours after the final battle. She stood beside him in her formal dress uniform, her face calm and composed despite the historic nature of the moment. Captain waited in the observation gallery above, recording everything for transmission back to Earth. The entire planet was watching. Ambassador floated forward to address the chamber. The being's voice echoed through the vast space, silencing all other conversation. The war games have concluded, announced. For the first time in 4,000 years, a new species has won the championship. Humanity has defeated all opponents, including Supreme Tactician, who had never before known defeat in a championship final. A wave of sound swept through the chamber. Some species expressed approval, others expressed disbelief. A few remained completely silent, still processing what had happened. The Council has met to discuss the implications of this victory, continued. We have reached several decisions that will be announced now. Felt Admiral's hand briefly touch his elbow, a gesture of support. Whatever came next, they would face it together. First, the Council has voted to grant humanity full membership status in the galactic community, effective immediately. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Full membership normally took centuries to achieve. Humanity had been part of the community for less than 3 years. Second, the Council has voted to offer humanity a permanent seat on the Military Advisory Board. This is an unprecedented honor for a species so new to interstellar affairs. However, the Council believes that the tactical innovations demonstrated by Lieutenant Park represent a valuable contribution to galactic security. More murmurs, louder this time. Some voices sounded angry. Third, the Council has authorized the creation of a joint military training program. All member species will be invited to learn from human military history and tactical doctrine. Supreme Tactician himself has volunteered to oversee this program and has expressed particular interest in studying human warfare. Blinked in surprise, wanted to study with humans after being defeated by one. As if reading his thoughts, a door at the side of the chamber opened. Supreme Tactician entered slowly. His mechanical body showed no sign of damage from the simulated battle, of course, but he moved with what seemed like careful deliberation. The ancient commander approached the central platform and stopped before. They looked at each other in silence for a long moment. "You cheated," said. Felt his heart skip. "I followed all the rules of the war games. Every action I took was within the boundaries set by the Council." "I did not say you broke the rules," replied. "I said you cheated. There is a difference." "I do not understand." Made a sound that might have been laughter. "For 3,000 years, I have fought opponents who followed their traditions, who used the strategies their species had developed over. They were predictable because they believed that tradition was strength. I could defeat them because I understood their traditions better than they did." "And me?" "You have no traditions. Your species has been fighting each other since before you discovered fire. Every generation of humans has invented new ways to kill each other. Every human war has produced new tactics, new weapons, new strategies. You have more military innovation in a single century than most species develop in 1,000 years." Paused, his mechanical eyes focusing on with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. "That is why you cheated. You did not play the game the way it was meant to be played. You played a different game entirely, a human game, and I was not prepared for it." "Are you angry?" asked carefully. Angry, seemed genuinely confused by the question. "I am grateful. For the first time in 2,000 years, I faced a challenge I did not know how to overcome. Do you understand how boring immortality becomes when nothing surprises you anymore? Admiral stepped forward. Supreme Tactician, you mentioned a training program. Are you truly interested in learning from human military history? Interested is not a strong enough word, replied. I am fascinated. Lieutenant Park used tactics from dozens of different eras of human history, ambush strategies from ancient mountain warriors, naval deceptions from seafaring cultures, guerrilla warfare from resistance movements. He combined them in ways that I could not have predicted because I did not know they existed. And you want to study these tactics? I want to study all of them. Every warrior species has ever fought. Every battle, every strategy, every innovation. If humanity can produce a commander like Lieutenant Park from a species only 3 years into interstellar travel, I want to understand how. Looked at the ancient commander with new eyes. He had expected anger or resentment. He had prepared himself for accusations of dishonor. Instead, he found genuine curiosity and respect. There is something you should understand, said quietly. Human military history is not something to be proud of. We have fought terrible wars against each other. Millions of our own people have died in conflicts that achieved nothing. Our tactical innovations came from necessity, not wisdom. We learned to fight well because we had no choice. Nodded slowly. Every species has darkness in its past. The conquered and enslaved other species for generations before we joined the Council. The nearly destroyed their own world through civil war. The still practice ritual combat that kills thousands of their own people every year. Then why is humanity's history so interesting to you? Because you learned from it, said. You did not repeat the same mistakes forever. Each war taught you something new. Each conflict made you adapt. You are not the strongest species in the galaxy. You are not the oldest. You are not but you are the ones who never stop learning. The chamber fell silent. Its words seemed to hang in the air. Admiral stepped forward to address the full council. On behalf of Earth and all of humanity, I accept the honors you have offered. We will take our seat on the Military Advisory Board. We will participate in the joint training program. We will share our knowledge with any species that wishes to learn. She paused, looking around the vast chamber at all the different beings gathered there. But I want to make something clear. Humanity did not come to the stars to conquer. We did not seek these war games as a way to prove our superiority. We came to the stars because we finally learned that our greatest enemy was never each other. It was stagnation. It was fear. It was the belief that there was nothing beyond our own small world. She turned to look directly at Ambassador. You have had peace for thousands of years. Your species have built amazing civilizations. Your technology is far beyond ours. But somewhere along the way, you forgot how to grow. You forgot how to change. You forgot that the universe is vast and full of surprises. Admiral smiled, and it was a warm smile full of hope. Humanity is here to remind you. We are new. We are young. We make mistakes, but we never stop trying. We never stop learning. We never stop growing. And maybe, just maybe, that is exactly what the galaxy needs right now. The chamber erupted in sound. Some species cheered. Some argued. Some sat in thoughtful silence. But nobody laughed. Nobody dismissed humanity as primitives anymore. Later that evening stood alone in his observation booth, looking out at the empty arena. The war games were over. The spectators had gone home. The holographic projectors were dark. Coordinator appeared beside him, as they often did. You are leaving tomorrow, said. Yes, Admiral wants me to return to Earth for debriefing. There will be ceremonies, speeches. Many people want to meet the human who defeated Supreme Tactician. You do not sound excited. Shook his head slowly. I am tired. I have not slept properly in days, and I keep thinking about how close I came to losing. One different decision, one moment of bad luck, and everything would have ended differently. But it did not end differently, pointed out. No, it did not. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Below them, cleaning machines moved across the arena floor, preparing for the next event, whatever that might be. Said eventually, "Why did you warn me before the games? You told me I would lose. You told me I would be humiliated. Why did you care what happened to a human?" His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "I have been a coordinator for many cycles. I have worked with many species. Most of them have disappointed me. They are arrogant. They are dismissive. They care only about their own advancement. And humans. You are also arrogant sometimes, and you can be dismissive. But there is something different about your species. Something I noticed from the first moment you arrived on this station." "What is that?" Turned to look at him with those large, compound eyes. "Hope. Despite everything your species has suffered, despite all the wars and destruction and pain in your history, you still have hope. You still believe that tomorrow can be better than today. You still reach for the stars even when logic says you should stay on the ground." Made a gesture that might have been a shrug. "I wanted you to succeed because the galaxy needs more hope. Perhaps I was wrong to warn you. Perhaps I should have simply believed in you from the beginning." Smiled. "You believed in me enough to tell me the truth. That was better than false encouragement." "Perhaps." They fell silent again. Outside the window, the stars stretched endlessly into the darkness. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting. Home was waiting. But knew he would return to this station. He would return to the galaxy. Because humanity's journey among the stars was just beginning, and there was so much more to learn, so much more to discover, so much more to become. The war games had changed everything. Not because humanity had won, but because humanity had shown what was possible when a species refused to accept its limitations. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly as it should be.